Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. My name is Audie, and if you were following last week's episode, you know that we featured this mandolin, which is mandolin number 2 in this batch of 10, and last week's episode concentrated on putting the binding around the peg head. And in this week's episode, we're going to continue to feature this mandolin as we put the inlay in this mandolin. This mandolin will take a standard of vine and flowers Ratliff R5 Master Model inlay, plus an inlaid logo here. And in addition to that, it'll have down the fingerboard a split block inlay pattern. Now, if you don't know what a split block inlay pattern means, just follow me as we film this week's episode and you'll find out. First, I'm going to lock it in my handy dandy holder jig. And we are going to tackle the peg head first. The first step is to get an outline of the vine pattern, and I have these plexiglass templates that I made years and years and years ago, and we line them up with the peg holes and take a nice felt tip type pin. Put us a pretty easy to follow, whoops, black line right there. It was a little light and hard to see, but I went over it again darker so that you could get a good look at it. Now I'm going to pencil on the rest of the vine pattern. I've found over the years that this suits me a little better if I tilt it slightly from the original idea. I think you can see that. And now comes the tricky part. I'm going to take my trim router with a teeny tiny 1/16 inch bit. I'm going to pull the light around here where I can see really good. I'm going to put on my glasses and I'm going to route out, try to stay as smoothly and evenly in that line that I just drew. Just try to split it right down the middle and not get any humps or bumps. Just try to be as clean as I possibly can. It's not going to come out clean, I already know that, but I'm going to get it as close as I can. Now, I would not blame you at all if you said, oh my goodness, he has ruined that peg head. But trust me, it'll all turn out nice and smooth and even in the end. I am going to take a razor knife with a brand new super sharp blade, and I'm going to clean all the fuzz off in here, and I'm going to smooth out any kind of wave in that in this channel, and just in general I'm going to make it nice and straight and pretty. Sit here and take a little bit of time and just really concentrate on making a good smooth looking channel. Now I'm pretty well cleaned out and evened up, and I'm going to take the same material, this inner black white black strip, and bend it over heat and put it in that slot. Right, here's one that I've got bent and ready to go, and I'm just going to ease that right down into that slot. And I have taken a compatible piece of walnut to this one right here, sanded it with 100 grit, and I have dust, walnut dust. So I'm going to take this walnut dust, just put it right here, and kind of rub it down into the cracks. Anything where it just doesn't fit just perfectly. I'm only going to concern myself with that much. Well, I'm going to try to get a little right in there. And I will take thin, runny super glue, just drip right on that. Stay away from anything that will make a joint for the moment anyway. Now we'll just let that dry before we move any farther. And now, using the same technique, a little bit of dust, some super glue, I've added this piece. Now here's a look at the inlay up to this point. I've got the big long piece put in and this piece. And now we're going to put this piece in. And I already have it basically cut and bent. And for those of you who are wondering how I've bent this stuff, I invite you to look back, I think, at last week's episode. And I use basically a toaster to do that. Now I'm going to cut this piece with just a wide enough channel to fit this piece in. sure that will fit in there, and it will. Put this end in first, work my way around. Now it looks like this piece goes under this piece, what it looks like. So we're going to use the sawdust, or sanding dust actually, and we're not trying to keep that out of anything, so we can just kind of go all over. And again with the thin runny super glue. And we lay that aside until that dries, and then we can start putting the pearl in. Now I have that last piece of vine inlaid, and we are all good to go, and it's ready for the pearl flowers. And I have cut these, I cut these months ago. These are mother of pearl, cut with a jeweler's saw, and we'll be cutting some pearl for the fingerboard inlays, so you'll be able to see that process too. But for now, I've already got these cut. We're going to inlay these right here on the end of the vines, about like that. And we're going to do that by me taking a blade to just hold that down, and a very, very sharp pencil. And I'm going to mark around that. As close and as tight as, whoops, close and as tight as I can. We'll just do one of them at a time. And I'm going to take a razor knife and etch that line really good and close. Let me turn the camera off and reposition it and show you that. Now what I'm going to do is just score that pencil line. The reason I score these things is, first of all, it's easier to see than a pencil line. And second of all, when you're using that router, you get fuzz out in front of the bit as the bit's cutting wood. And the score line will actually keep, when you see the fuzz go away, then you know you've pretty much hit the score line. So you can, it's kind of a little trick that you can use to know that you've cut enough, because lots of times it's, even with the best of magnification and everything else, it's kind of hard to see what you're doing sometimes up, especially in that little recess or alcove that you have to look through on one of those routers. Sometimes it's really hard to see, and every little trick that you can possibly utilize is helpful. All right, so we're ready to do the router thing now. And there the cavity for the inlay is cut. I'm going to take the same razor knife and just clean up all that stuff out to those score lines. And I think I'll go ahead and just do this one too while I'm at it, and that way I can glue them both at the same time. I now have both cavities filled and the inlay that's going to go in the cavity laid there. And I'm going to explain to you my process of getting these pieces of pearl in those holes. What I normally do is put just a little bit of dust in each hole. Fit those things there. Set them and they'll just, if you cut the hole right, they'll fall right in. I take a piece of glass and just kind of press and rub, and that, if I've done everything right, that pretty much brings that piece of pearl right flush with the surface. Then I will, just like the vine, I'll just try to put dust in anywhere where there might be a ill fit or a crack. Looks pretty good. One more go with the glass just to make sure. And then super glue, just the regular kind, not the gel. And then I just pour it on and coat everything. That super glue is thin enough to pretty much soak all of that dust. And this may seem like overkill, but I usually go back one more time with the glass. I'm not really trying to do anything except just gonna keep the glass moving, because if you don't, you'll glue that glass to the peghead and you won't be happy then. I speak from experience. Now I go back and check it one more time. And set that to the side and let all of that glue dry real good. Now the flowers are in and it's time to do the logo. And the logo will be put in exactly the same manner. I will take a very, very sharp pencil, very carefully and I'll do them in pieces. I'll do the Ratliff, then I'll do the R, and then I'll put the dot in above the I. But I will do that just exactly like I did the flowers. I'll just take the Ratliff part there with a very fine pencil. I'll trace around it. I'll score it. I will clean out the cavity and then test fit the name down in there. When I get it to go the way I want it to, I'll put it in, and then once everything is dry and I can sand it clean again, then I will do the R and the dot. And now that I have put in the R and dotted the I, the entire peghead has got its final inlay on mandolin number 2. Here's a close-up. Now the customer has also ordered that we put in a split block inlay, and I will take a piece of paper and show you what a split block inlay is. The split block inlay, let's just draw one of these inlays. It's a block shape that fits in between the frets. So let's make
this a fret, and this a fret, and the inlay goes in between the frets. Much like, and I'm sure you've seen guitars and things with this fret pattern, or this inlay pattern actually. Like that right there. So you recognize that? Seen some electric guitars with that pattern in between the frets, and the pattern gets, as you go down the fretboard, then the pattern gets close, or the frets get closer and closer. The pattern gets more and more elongated. So now normally you take a piece of pearl. If you do this with two different pieces of pearl, the pearl will light up differently as you twist it in the light. Sometimes you can take a single piece of pearl and then cut it in, cut it square, and then cut it in two, inlay it in. And I'm thinking that I'm going to at least cut one piece and try an entirely new technique, which is just cut a big square block and then engrave a line in between here, fill it in if we have to, and stain that black, and see if that might not work. The reason I'm thinking about doing that is when we're down here with these big wide frets, it's easy to cut two pieces and put them in. But on a mandolin, when we get up here to the very, very thin pieces, that's kind of hard to get that split and make it work. And I'm thinking that if I can just get a solid piece in there and then scribe it from corner to corner, that I might be able to pull that entire effect off all the way down. Easier than cutting two separate pieces of pearl and inlaying them. So we're going to give that a try anyway. And because I'm primarily doing it that method in an effort to increase the quality of the inlay on the 15th fret cross piece, I think that's just where I'll start. I'll do that one first. I now have the cavity cut for the 15th fret piece of pearl, and the piece of pearl is sized to fit the hole, and so now it's simply time to glue that in. Now we'll let that dry and then sand everything flush. Okay, here's the plan. That first piece of inlay has been put in the fingerboard, and I am going to put a steel edge right through there somewhere. Scratch this thing with the sharp side of a razor knife. Hope I don't slip. Very gently. Just do it again and again. Till I've got a pretty decent scratch in there, which I do. And then I'm going to take a hand palm engraver with that tip on it and see if I can just widen and deepen that line. I am removing material. Now we'll tackle it from this angle to get up there where I've been kind of weak. I now have the first inlay put in. As you can see, I've got the cavity cut for the second inlay, but I've got the first inlay in, scratched line, And with my handy dandy metal engraving hand tools, I have made that line wider. And now we are going to use a product that I have never used before. This is William Laskin's Special Blend Engraving Filler. It's a filler stick. I'll read a little bit. Intended for use by engravers of shell, mother of pearl, abalone, etc., metals and ivories. Its unique composition helps it fill and adhere to even the shallowest of hairline engraver cuts. It can be used on fretboard inlays. Basically, the instructions say to just fill the entire cavity, and then you can scuff it off with a real fine sandpaper. Looks like a big crayon to me. I've never used this before, so we're going to just see what happens. Well, that looks pretty promising. Let's just see what happens if we go over that with some 400 grit paper real quick. I think I have gotten lucky and come up with exactly the effect I was hoping for. Wow, look at that. Perfect. That did exactly what I was hoping it would do. Wonderful. Now we'll just inlay all of the rest of them. Now I have this piece ready to go in, but it occurred to me that if I go ahead and glue that in, then I can't really get the router base here to cut these holes. So I'm going to go ahead and rough all these holes out and leave just the handwork before I glue the next piece in. And that way, as it's drying, I can work on these with, the cleaning up with the X-Acto knife and that sort of thing. And so there, all of the cavities have been roughed out, and we're ready to glue the piece that is prepared in the 12th fret, and while it's drying, I'll be able to hand clean these other ones up. Now I have all of the block inlaid in mandolin number 2, and I am taping the end of the fretboard here so that I don't grind off the end of the fretboard and get the fretboard unlevel. And I am just roughing down with a very, very rough file the excess pearl sticking out. Now that I have it roughed down and reasonably level. It's still a little bumpy. I'm going to take a flat board, wrap some 80 grit paper around it, and level sand it. Now I've got all the glue off of it. I will work my way down through finer grit paper, going from the 80 to 120. Then from 120 to 220, and then probably 400 before I call it quit, right at the moment anyway. I actually sanded it down to 600 grit paper because of the engraving that has to be done. We have to split these blocks, and the 12th fret actually gets some lettering on it. So I took it down to 600 grit. I am going to cut in here and say that I'm getting ready to end this video. I will give you a status report on mandolin number 2. Not only did I finish the inlay, but I also got the frets in it, and I have spent the better part of today, which is Friday, 220 grit in this thing in preparation for putting the stain and the finish on it. So let me give you a good close-up of mandolin number 2. Now, speaking of stain and finish, other things that got done this week were mandolin number 1 got not only its stain and some coats of finish, it actually got the final coats of finish on it. So let me give you a good close-up front and back of mandolin number 1 in the batch. And the other things that got done on the batch this week were frets in all of the mandolins up through number 6. So the only mandolins in the batch now that do not have frets are 7, 8, 9, and 10. So I actually put frets in whatever it was, 4 or 5 mandolins this week, as well as the other stuff that you saw. So that's where we're at the end of the week with this batch of mandolins. And next week we'll almost certainly get color on mandolin number 2 here, and maybe some of these other ones, and we're just moving right along. I want you to come back next week and visit with us on the next episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. And as you know, we do it each and every week. So come back and visit with us in the future as well. And we'll see you then on the next episode. Bye.